So, sorry I missed last week. I was supposed to go pick up a forge off of Facebook Marketplace to be able to do blacksmithing stuff to the homestead. But the guy kind of flaked out. I don't know. Not really worried about it. It would be nice to have for the price, but whatever. So, what we've been doing for the past couple months now is a series where we're live streaming from Abraham all the way up to David and his mighty men. That way we can learn the lessons. I want to talk about David and his mighty men, but I wanted to have the backstory and all those lessons along the way. And we've finally made it to the book of Judges. After Judges, we're going to go into like Kings and Chronicles and stuff. Kings and Chronicles parallel each other. We're going to King Chronicles. We're going to talk about Samuel, the last judge. He's also the guy who appoints both the first king of Israel and then King David. And then we'll learn about King David and his mighty men, and then we'll move on to something else. So, it should be done sometime in November, I'm thinking. Maybe December. I think it might be October already. No, it's September. Should be done by November. Anyway, so that's where we're at. So, at the beginning of the book of Judges, Joshua dies, and there's a few left, Caleb and a few others of his generation that are left that are basically living a godly life. And they're keeping everything together and keeping people worshiping God. But as soon as all that generation dies off, the people start moving away from God. And we need to do a good job of teaching the next generation about God. As both fathers, we need to be teaching our kids, but also as servant leaders of the communities we're involved in, we need to be teaching other kids out there the truth about God and how to live a godly life and how we should be leading a good life. We shouldn't be waiting. I've said this a lot on the channel. We shouldn't be waiting for some politician who really doesn't care about you to make America great again. What we need to do to make America great again is do what Alexis de Tocqueville said. Well, Alexis de Tocqueville in his book, he wrote over 100 years ago, he said America is great because Americans are good. If we want to make America great again, instead of waiting on a politician to do it, what we need to do is get off our butts and make ourselves great and make other people around us great. Or not great, good. We need to make ourselves good and make others around us good. And we need to start doing good things. And together, if more and more of us start to do good things, that will once again make America great. And Jesus told us that there's no one good but God. So if we want to do goodly things, we need to be godly people and doing godly things and modeling our lives after Jesus. And in case you don't know, Jesus is God. We can have a whole discussion about that if you want. If you want to have a discussion about that, feel free to hop on to Telegram. That's where I want to get the discussions done and have one-on-one discussions with people. T.me/prepare to prosper, or search in Telegram for prepare to prosper, or you can mention something down in the comments and we can have a discussion about it. I'm not super prepared to do it off the top of my head, but I can do it. And right now, talk about how Jesus is God. And if you give me some time to prepare, I can bring receipts. Anyway, so people fall away. The people of Joshua's and Caleb's generation didn't prepare the following generations to be godly. As soon as they fall, or as soon as Joshua's generation dies away, they fall back into sin, or the people fall into sin. They start worshiping the gods of the people that they around them, and they start worshiping God the way God tells them not to worship Him. And they have false gods. They basically just do whatever they feel like doing instead of sticking to the teachings of God. And if you read chapter 1 and part of chapter 2 of Judges, it says that when they were following God and they were powerful, they used that power in an ungodly way instead of pushing the people out or making the people that were in the land part of Israel. Instead, they enslaved them. The Bible specifically says forcing people into slavery is a sin. And now that all these people forced into slavery are living amongst the Israelite people, they have an influence on them. And Israel starts to worship their gods, the Canaanite gods. And if they would have done what they were supposed to do and lead these people to God, then they wouldn't have that outside influence. So we need to be careful about what influences we allow around ourselves and our families and those we care about. I'm not saying we should throw away all of our TVs and electronics and live like Amish people, but also we need to be careful and watch what happens to those around, or watch what's happening around us. Not let that the culture creep in and lead us away from God. Instead, we need to be the example of leading people towards God. Anyway, they fall away. The Israelite people fall away from following God, and then God stops protecting them from the other nations, and they come in and start to oppress Israel because Israel's never was a strong nation. Uh, the only times they were able to defeat their enemy is when they were following God, and God gave them protection from their enemy. So God quits protecting them from their enemies. The enemies come in and oppress Israel. The people decide, hey, we don't like being oppressed. We don't like living like this. This sucks. But we remember we have the Bible, the Old Testament. They have other things. Well, they just had the Torah then, just the first 5 books of the Bible. They have some other things that go, hey, why don't we try this? And we try turning back to God. And we try to follow God because the commandments say over and over again in the law, it says that God will bless them if they follow him. And if they choose to turn away and reject him, he won't bless them anymore. He won't protect them anymore. And they're like, hey, why don't we turn towards God? And they start to turn towards God and they crawl out and they pray and they beg God to help them. And this happens over and over again in a cycle throughout the book of Judges. And the first person God sends as a judge to help them is Othniel. He's actually the nephew of Caleb. So they're being oppressed by Cushan-Rishathaim of Aram. I have no idea how to say that name. Anyway, Othniel comes. God comes to Othniel. God gives him his spirit. So the Holy Spirit comes and inhabits Othniel. And then Othniel leads the people to overthrow the people oppressing them. And he leads the people to turn back to God. And when he does that, they have 40 years of peace because they've turned to God. And we're going to see this cycle over and over again throughout the book of Judges. And if you read the books, Pendulum and The Fourth Turning, I'll try to put Amazon links in the description for those. You'll see that this cycle continues. It's usually a 40-year cycle. People do the right thing. Then, we've all heard the phrase, hard times make tough men. Hard times make hard men. Hard men make good times. Good times make soft men. Soft men make hard times. So that cycle continues. So in the book of book of Judges, Caleb and Joshua and their generation conquered Israel and made it a peaceful place for the people and made it a good time, made it easier for the people, the Israelites, to live. And as soon as they had it easy, they fell away from God. And as soon as, and then they had an easy life, they were so soft, they didn't put in the effort, and they turned away from God. God came in and oppressed them. Because of those hard times, they then turned to God, and they started following God, and they were led by a single man, usually in the book of Judges. Other times throughout history, it's not been led by a single man. Anyway, and then they're oppressed, or then while they're being led, they are good people and they're strong people, and they make society better, but they fail to raise their kids in a way that their kids can continue to raise good, hard, strong kids and continuously have a good times. And that cycle continues. And that cycle continues to this day. And while I think the assassination of Charlie Kirk was a terrible, awful thing, it looks like there's been a lot of people turning to God. We have one family come to church with us that's because of Charlie Kirk's assassination. I've seen other people, other I heard, seen lots of other people news stories and people sharing their stories and other people's stories on the internet about how there lots of people are seem to be turning to God. And there was an estimate of over 100,000 people. Well, the one stadium that for Charlie Kirk's funeral, memorial service held like almost 1,000 people. Then they had an overflow stadium. Then they had people in the street. And I've heard estimates of like around 100 million people have viewed the live stream. And then there's these clips that are being shared from that, and um, people taking whole sections of the speech of people are taking people's whole talks at Charlie Kirk's memorial and putting them on the internet. And it looks like even though it was tragic that he was killed that way, it looks like more and more people are turning to God because of it. And we've been in tough times. 9/11, the '08 recession, Bidenflation, other things that should have been recessions but weren't called that because of politics. We've had 20 years of war that we lost in Iraq and Afghanistan. I mean, it's been pretty rough the last decade, over a decade. So hopefully this is the turning point, and we start going into the good times. Now, I got to make sure that we're going into these good times that my kids are ready for it, and that they can take advantage of these good times, but not be lulled into sleep by them. I just made a short. I got to edit it this morning when I was working out. The leaves are starting to turn brown. You might be able to see some like right in here. Some the tree that's behind you guys is completely turned orange. Fall is coming, but spring will come. But fall's coming, then followed by winter, then spring, then summer. We need to keep in mind that these cycles God is in control of, not us. Now we can use fall's coming this week. I want to try to get some more lettuces and stuff planted, and also I'm planning on some stuff to try to get some cracky hydroponic stuff going in the house, so we'll have food throughout the winter, more fresh food throughout the winter. And so I'm using the fact that I know hard times are coming in. I won't be able to garden as much, and preparing for those hard times. And then near the end of winter, getting ready for spring, I'll be getting the garden beds ready. Hopefully, I'll be prepared to be starting seeds. I'll have a greenhouse built. I want to try to build a greenhouse over this winter, and that way I'll use the winter to prepare for the good times, and then use the good times to prepare for use the summer to prepare for next winter, and constantly be making the situation for myself and my family and those around me better. I thought this was going to be a short live stream because I don't have much in notes, but we're only at point 2. But I try to pray before these live streams, and I ask God to help me to learn from them and grow from them myself, but help me to know what needs to be said and know what needs to be done, and help others grow closer to Him through these live streams. So I don't mind going off topic as long as it's tangentially related, like these topics are. All right. So Othniel leads them out of oppression. They spend 40 years of good times, and we can learn from that lesson that we need to help our families not lead our families away from the oppression of the world, and teach them how to not fall into that cycle, into that trap. Because there was people even in the Great Depression that made a fortune, and not because they preyed upon people. It's because they were ready and prepared and knew what to do. All right. So then Othniel dies, like we all do, and when he dies, he's no longer leading the people to follow God correctly, and no longer leading them into be godly people, and they fall back into idol worship and sin and stuff like that. So, so they're oppressed by King Eglon of Moab for 18 years, and then they reach out and start praying and asking God for a deliverer. So the first time they waited 8 years. The second time they waited 18. We'll see that as a general rule, they wait longer and longer each time before they reach out towards God and pray and ask God to deliver them from their sins. We should learn from that, and we shouldn't wait so long. We should try to recognize our sin and the sins of those around us earlier, and start reaching out towards God and start repenting instead of waiting so long and suffering so much. Like I said earlier about Charlie Kirk's assassination, I hope this is a turning point to where the United States starts to repent and turn back towards God. So then they're oppressed for 18 years. They pray, ask for deliverance. Elihu, God sends His spirit to Elihu, who's a left-handed man. And as being a left-handed person myself, awesome. Totally endorse being left-handed. And I've heard stories that, like, I've heard people bring up the conjecture that his tribe tends to be left-handed. I haven't seen that in the Bible, but that may be true, may not be true. It'd be an interesting little tidbit if it was. But anyway, Elihu's left-handed. He's a Benjamin. He's from the tribe of Benjamin. So he goes to see King Eglon, and he's bringing their tribute to King Eglon, to the king. And the king is grotesquely overweight because he's a lazy king, and he's politically powerful, and people just bring stuff to him. So he doesn't do any work. He just sits around all day and orders other people to do work for him. And Elihu, I think that's how you spell his name. Say his name. Elihud. Eliad. I'm gonna go with Eliad. Eliad brings the tribute from Israel to the king. And then he leaves with everybody else. And he goes, you know what, guys, keep going without me. I'm going to go back. I got to talk to the king. So he goes back to the king and says, hey, I got a secret message that I'm supposed to tell only the king. Can't tell anyone else. And he goes in. The king's like, oh, I like this. I want to know secret messages that nobody else knows. So they go into the his inner room, his private part of his castle, or his fortification house thing. That's only he goes into pretty much. And they go in there, and Ehud, being left-handed, he snuck in the dagger on his right side. They weren't expecting it. He pulls out a dagger. Some say knife, some say small sword, some sort of bladed weapon, and he stabs the king. And it's gross. His like guts, like bile comes out of his guts, and he's so fat that his like fat falls over the knife blade, and like you can't even the handle of the knife, and you can't even tell where the knife is in him, and he falls over dead. Well, the judge goes over, quickly locks the door, sneaks out a window, and leaves. Kind of a cowardly move, but he's completely surrounded by the king's bodyguards. He would have been killed if he didn't. So he leaves, and then it's an interesting story. I like to imagine when this story was told as an oral tradition, people speaking it and passing it or out loud. That especially the younger boys are like, oh, that's gross, with this bile and intestinal matter spilling out. And then but this next part of the story, I bet you the preteen boys really like too. So the king's guards are like, man, he's been in there for a long time. Well, maybe he's in the bathroom, just going to the bathroom, maybe. And they stand around forever, and they're like, all right, nobody goes to the bathroom this long. It says they wait to the point of embarrassment. So they're embarrassed they've waited so long for him to go to the bathroom. And they take a key and they unlock and find him dead. So the Moabite then figure that Ehud, the judge, they figure Ehud, the judge, must have killed him. They get the army together to go attack Israel. And by then, Ehud has gathered the armies of Israel together in order to go fight the Moabite, and they end up killing 10,000 Moabites, winning the battle, and then they're free and led into good times again until the prophet or till the judge dies. And we're going to go into the next judge next time. But what we can learn from Lidu here is that God gives us all unique strengths and things that make us different and special. And we need to honor those things that make everybody unique and special, um, and use those different skills and gifts, like honor what our friends and family have and those around us and our children have, and use those skills together to form a strong unit. None of us can survive alone. We need others around to help us and to so we can all live a good life. Uh, like I can cook, but Sarah's a better cook than I am. Sarah can work on the cars some, but I'm much better at working on the cars than she is. Both of us have our strengths and our weaknesses, and we work together to accomplish more. And I really should be leaning into some of my own strengths more to accomplish more. And I need to get a good work harder on getting a good group of godly people around me to share our skills with. Um, I hope the sound's still working on this. Yeah, my transmitter battery's running low. Anyway, so I need to be working on that harder. We didn't change the resolution when I did that. Anyway, um, there's a story in the Bible where, in the New Testament, where Jesus is preaching in a house. He's teaching in a house, and this guy who's paralyzed, his buddies drag him up onto the roof because they can't get him close to Jesus. And his buddies tear the roof apart of this house to lower him down into Jesus, in order to get healed. And when Jesus sees the faith of this man's friends, he heals the man. We need to work on surrounding ourselves with people that would do that for us. And one of the ways to do that is to be the kind of person who would do that. I don't have a lot of friends, and I don't really have any friends that are that close to me and that connected to me that I think would do that. And I need to work harder on building that group of friends. Some people call them foxhole buddies. Some people call them 3 a.m. friends. Whatever you want to call them. We all need to be working together to build those tight-knit communities. All right. And that wraps up all my notes. I got another page of stuff, but we pretty much covered it all. So if you like this kind of stuff, like I said earlier, I want to have a discussion on Telegram. There's a link in the description. It's t.me/prepare to prosper, or you can go on to Telegram, search prepare to prosper. I try to post things as often as they're relevant there. There's not a lot of people there, so there's not a lot of discussion. But the only way there's going to be discussion is if people start joining in and having that conversation. I'm trying to build a community online as well as in real life. I want it to be a discussion where I'm not the leader telling you what to think and telling you what to do. I want some pushback. I want some back and forth. And not just about the Bible study stuff, about homesteading, about preparedness, about living out our mission. So that's all I have today. Thank you for watching. And remember, we prepare today so we can prosper tomorrow.